All right, yes, I believe we're on and we're live. Welcome, everyone. This is unusual, but instead of doing a separate recording for the answers to the Patreon questions and the Subscribe Star questions, I'm going to be doing them live because Heather and I are going on vacation. And the chat is back. Rainbow Asteroid says, I thought Tim was on vacation. Almost there. Just trying to finish up everything. I've got a whole bunch of videos queued up that I really hope you'll enjoy. So this will be interesting. We have Darth Vega joining us. How are we doing, Darth?
Doing just fine, Shane. How are you?
And you are Josh Havens, so you have a question, and this will be nice when we get to that.
That's me.
And we've also got, which is the other Darth, Chris. He is delivering pizzas and doesn't know when he'll be home. So I think what we'll do is we'll kind of skip over his question and do it later just in case he comes in. And then we can do it when his is online. And let's see, we got Darky, Rainbow, and JC Armitage in the chat so far. Yes. Not that many people so far, but we'll see. We'll see who comes in. Scorch is here. Hello, Scorch. Yes, the chat is back. I'm doing the old live thing. I have no idea how to get the chat to show up on this thing in the new one, but there is one quick thing before we get started, because this is for the weekend of the 4th, and I don't really have any other way of letting you know, but you've heard me on the podcast do promos for the Tuttle Twins book, or books. There's a bunch of them. If you're interested in those, they're doing a July 4th sale. I have a special link in the description, my affiliate link you can click on, and get 75% off, including a brand new book they have about the Declaration of Independence. So, especially if you have kids and you don't want to leave their political education, up to your government schools, then you can just get those books, and they're really amazing. So help raise the next generation. And Rainbow Asteroid says, whoa, this stream hasn't been demonetized yet. That's cool. We'll see how it goes. All right, well, why don't we go ahead and go in with the questions, and we'll start with yours, Josh, since you're here. You're asking, is it justified to take a life with a firearm if someone is trying to steal your personal property? How far can one go to protect their property? Also, for the next AMA, can you respond to a 48-minute video? If you're too busy for that, I'll ask a different question. So, second one first there. I haven't really gone into how the production on video responses go, but typically what I'll have to do is I watch the video and kind of take notes as I go, and the places I want to respond to. And then there's generally research involved, and then there's writing the final script. And then there's, recording it and editing and getting it up. Basically, if I do that for like a 20-minute video, it's probably a good 4 or 5 hours of work, if not more. So a 48-minute video is generally a bit longer than I'm willing to tackle, because that's a few days of solid work doing one that long. I mean, even if we just what's that?
I totally understand. That's why I asked, just to be sure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even if we tried to do it just on a live stream, just pausing every so often. Hello, Wes. But just pausing it every so often and just going through it straight, it would probably still be like a 3-hour live stream, if not more. So, I mean, it just takes a lot to respond to these things. So, to the first part of your question, is it justified to take a life? And this is something that, Scorch, you're having kids. Congratulations. Are they in the oven, or are you just planning on it, or let us know.
Hello,
But
sorry about that. I had to adjust my volume and turn it down a bit because of the
feedback.
feedback.
You sound like you're about 20 miles away.
Yeah, sorry about that.
And I'm also hearing myself through you.
Yeah, I'm trying to correct that right now.
Yeah, make sure you got your headphones on.
I had a cat up here apparently fucking with my stuff while I was away.
I'm hearing bleeps. I think you may have your stereo mix going through instead of your microphone. I think that may be the problem.
I have these 19-year-old speakers, and I'm about to mute my own server. And
it's annoying about Discord. It's like every time you log in or pull up a new instance of it, you have to go in and turn off those notifications all over again. It doesn't remember it.
No.
That's annoying.
And yeah, it was. I had these 19-year-old speakers are very OP for old school 2001 speakers.
Well, it's at least sounding better, so hopefully you can tweak with that. So, getting back to Josh's question, the kind of misconception is people say, well, the response has to be proportional, as though this is about some kind of balance in the universe or something like that, and you can only justify lethal force to, defend from lethal force. That's not actually how it works when you work out the ethics from first principles. You can do whatever force is necessary to stop the infraction, but no more. So even if someone is trying to use lethal force against you, if it doesn't take lethal force to stop them, then lethal force isn't justified. On the other hand, if it is a property crime, but the only way to stop them is by lethal force, then you got to do what you got to do. So that's really about what it is.
So, like, imagine they've taken something of yours, they're running away from you. I would imagine at that point you can't just shoot them in the back.
Oh, I mean, there's like 1,000,001 details that you would have. I would imagine that depending on what it is, it would be better to just, let them go and file a suit against them or something. Because even in an anarcho-capitalist state, you have something like a DDRO or something, some way to reclaim your property or the monetary value of it or something. Yeah, so in a situation like that, it would not be justified to use lethal force. How long will the stream last? I'm allocating 2 hours, which is about our normal live stream length, but we'll see how long it takes to go through these questions, because this is a kind of special one, so...
So what's this particular cast about, if I may ask? Since I'm a little behind, I've been busy myself.
Oh yeah, I'm asking I'm answering the questions from patrons every month. I do an AMA for them. If you donate at least $3 a month, then you can ask me a question and I answer it. And normally I do it on a regular video, but since I'm going on vacation, I've been kind of rushing to get a whole bunch of videos out and scheduled just to keep the channel going while we're out. So. That's what I'm doing. Yeah. And so we just did Josh's, which is cool because he's here. I'm skipping over Chris's in case he can make it in later. He was basically working until 7 his time, which is basically when we started the stream. And these things work. They might work him 10, 15 minutes over or whatever. He's a pizza delivery guy, so that's how it goes. Then he'd want to get home and he might want to, kind of relax a bit and come on. So maybe he'll be on in an hour or so. And if so, we can do his questions with him on. If not, we'll just shoulder through. But I mean, we can put that off. And go to the one from Ali Adib. And he said, Joe Rogan said, you can't have a totally free market free of government regulations. This is because when he worked in construction, he saw a lot of corner cutting. He argues that with no government involvement, there would be a lot more. Is there a good reason to doubt this would be the case? He did give a link to the video. I did not have a chance to watch it. I am sorry about that. Otherwise, I'd be able to respond more intelligently to what he said, but I don't know the details of his argument or what he experienced. But, I mean, the first question I have is, was he doing government work? Because where do you find corner cutting more than in government work? Am I right?
Agreed.
Mm-hmm.
Unless there's some kind of, state protectionism involved that, allows you legally to get away with corner cutting in a bad way. But then again, that's just government, once again, just another pathology.
Well, and they're spending other people's money. I mean, if you're hiring construction people to do something you want, you're going to try to make sure they don't do stuff like that. Like when they were building my house, I was kind of going over there just every day just to look at things and make sure. This wasn't an example of corner cutting. It was just a dumb thing. With the way they had positioned the nozzle where the shower head would go, and I'm 6'3", the shower nozzle would basically have been aimed at my chest. And I can't take a shower like that. And I'm like, no, this isn't going to work. You got to make it own. They came back with, well, that's the standard height. And I said, yeah, well, I'm not. And finally, I had to go, look, I'm paying you. I'm the one giving you money. Do it the way I want it. So, Most of them were good about it, but that guy, for some reason, I don't know. But, I mean, that's the thing. When you're spending your money, you're going to want to make sure that they don't do that corner cutting.
Always right.
Yep. On the other hand,
follow that, then you can't. Then we don't need to discuss. Go fuck yourself.
Yeah. On the other hand,
is there a good book on the concept of DROs? Because I don't know really much about how they would actually.
There's just been a lot of speculation. I know Disenthrall has covered them a lot, which is a great channel. Everyone should go and check out.
Oh, he's an excellent channel. I agree.
Yeah, Patrick Smith and what's the other guy's name? I don't remember.
Butter actually has done some good work on it, I think.
Okay.
Don't quote me on that. I'm trying to go off of memory.
But the other point about corner cutting was that if they're doing something that's, quote unquote cutting corners and you don't mind, is it really corner cutting or is it just being efficient and giving you what you want? Because, I mean, if you don't, particularly mind, then, they're just being efficient and they're doing the work at a price you can afford while maximizing their profits. So, are you still an anti-feminist? I don't really know. I'm anti-third wave feminist. Maybe put it that way. Yeah. Clash Pride says Chaos Theory by Robert Murphy. So I guess that would be. He does have a video out on how prisons might work. Yeah. Which is what Scorcher just asked. Do you think prison will exist in Ancapistan? See Bob Murphy's video on that. And keep in mind that when people are doing things like that, they're just giving you ideas. But it's not like the way we would mandate things to work, because we wouldn't mandate things to work. People would be free to try different things. Yeah.
Can't allow that. The people are too stupid, Shane.
Yeah, people don't know what they want. So I'm trying to think if there are any other... Like I said, I didn't watch this video. I didn't have a chance. I've been too busy with getting the videos I have queued up and doing other things to try and get ready for vacation. So, but I think that's pretty much that's about as solidly as I think I can answer the question without actually watching the video, which I might do when I get back and see kind of the details of what he's talking about. And Ali, I know his podcasts are really long, so if you could respond and just put in the time code where he starts talking about that would help me tremendously. So,
if you continue to do these live stream AMAs, if I don't show up before you go live, I most likely won't be there. So,
okay,
just for your.
Okay, well, we'll see how it goes. I kind of like with a lot of these questions to really kind of think it through and script it out and get my thoughts down. So this is the first time I've tried it as a live stream, so we'll see how it goes off the cuff. Clash Pride says Conkin's work goes into it as well. JC Armitage says holding people against their will is a violation of the NAP. The closest thing you'd have to something like that would be rehab centers, not prisons. Well, if you watch Murphy's video, he's not talking about holding people against their will. He's talking about, you've done something terrible like a murder, and now no one will do business with you. They've completely shut you out of society. No one will rent you a room. No one will sell you a house. No one will sell you groceries. What are you going to do? And so voluntarily you would go to this place, whether you want to call it a prison or a rehab center. I think he kind of ironically calls it a hotel. But basically the idea is you would go there and you'd kind of work off your room and board. And of course, since they've got criminals there, they have all the beefed up security that they would need to do that. But the idea... Go ahead.
I wish we had mutual aid societies come.
Yeah, that'd be really good. But the idea is they would do work and they would pay not only for their room and board and the security and everything, and maybe even get a little something extra for themselves. They would also be rebuilding their reputation, and that would be a for the day, which maybe they could one day come back into society and be productive members. So that was basically his idea.
Would a death penalty situation even be possible in Anarchistan, or
I don't see any moral justification for the death penalty whatsoever. If you have to kill someone to stop them aggressing against you, then that's what you got to do. But I don't see it justified as being anything, retaliatory or punitive.
Right.
If you get what I'm saying. All right, so we'll come back to Chris's in a little bit. Over on Subscribestar, Zayon or Zhaon, I don't know how that's supposed to be pronounced. He has one that's, I think, is going to kind of spark a little bit of discussion. And if you'll give me a second to make it bigger on my screen, because this type is really small. Okay. Yeah, he's asking how to handle contract agreements in scenarios that could not be foreseen, which is a tricky part, but that's why you have principles. You can go back to first principles and work out what to do. So he gives a couple of cases, and this is probably where most of our discussion is going to be in. The first case, when a scenario literally could not be foreseen, example, when renting space for business, owners will tell you that the price is high because they are offering not only space, but also the business opportunity that comes with that particular location, so it's a good location for foot traffic or whatever. But when human malware kicked in, many, if not most, of landlords turned their backs and told that they are just renting space. And this is what the contract states. Shouldn't it be that landlords, as the owners, are at least somehow responsible for protecting their place and maybe even surroundings so it will work as advertised? That would have to be written into the contract. So, I mean, if you've got a contract that they're just renting space, it could still be the case that they're able to demand that higher price because of the foot traffic or whatever, because, if you're not going to rent the space, they'll be able to find someone, who'll rent it at a higher price. So, I mean, those are really two different concepts that you're conflating: the price, which is supply and demand, and the contract, which is their actual obligation. What do you guys think about that?
I have to go do some stuff. I'll be back as soon as I can.
Oh, that's cool. What about you, Vega?
I'm just a little confused as to what the question is asking here.
So the question is asking, like, you've got a contract that you're just renting space, but the price is high because there's some kind of business opportunity there. I just threw in, foot traffic as an example. He didn't, particularly specify that. But let's say this place has a lot of foot traffic, and so that's, a high price, and so you contract them to rent for that price. And I'm not exactly sure what he means about human malware, but I don't know if he's talking about, like vandalism or whatever, or if he's just talking about the fact that you're not getting the foot traffic that you're promising. But when that happens, the landlords just say, hey, we're renting the space. We're not responsible for anything else. So
sounds like a buyer beware type.
Yeah. Like I said, there's two different things: the price that it's going for and what they've contractually agreed to.
Yeah.
What is the best path to get the U.S. to Anarchistan? This is Scorch. I believe a slow dismantlement of the Gov, I guess that's government, and a slow convincement of the mass to accept the NAP. I don't think hard turn to anarchy will ever work. My thing is just build out the alternatives. Make cryptocurrencies that we can use instead of the dollar. Make schools that people can use as an alternative to the government schools. Basically break their monopoly power and just say, let us build some alternatives. Let people say, I mean, look at all the police stuff that's going on now. If people had the ability to say, you know what, the portion of my taxes that's paying the police department, you don't get that tax money anymore. I've got it. I'm going to go give it to, this other police or security organization or whatever it is to protect my property. I mean, if you think about
3D
what's
printers to get around gun laws, stuff like that.
Well, yeah, that's another example. But specifically with the cops, I was thinking, like with the George Floyd thing, or even just the thing we've covered so often, they think you have a few ounces of a plant, so they bust through your door and shoot your dog. Who would pay for that? I mean, no one would pay for that. So, I mean, if we just had the ability to say, no, I don't like what you're doing with my money, I'm going to take it somewhere else. So I think that would be the best way. And as far as accepting the nap, I don't think that's not, it's kind of a straw man to say, oh, well, this will only work if everyone accepts the nap. No, it won't. It doesn't require people to accept the nap. It's just that if you violate it, you're in trouble. So, let's see. Yeah, JC, I don't know what he means by human malware. I mean, the landlord would be, well, whatever it is, the landlord would be obliged to fulfill whatever's in the terms of the contract. But
one of my Anarchist friends is always saying, for years we've been yelling at the mountain to go away when it should be going around the mountain.
Yep.
And I'm seeing technology of today being some of that in certain areas like crypto and
that's why they're so threatened by it.
Yeah.
That's why they have to rush in to regulate crypto and stop people from doing end-to-end encryption and things like that. All right, he has a second case, or she, I'm not actually sure of the gender there. Sorry if I misgendered you. Second case, when inability to foresee, pretty sure English is not his first language, so I'm trying to kind of read around that. When inability to foresee was due to lack of knowledge and experience. Example, you signed up a contract to develop a small game. During the process, the amount and type of feedback and requests are way beyond what you have expected. Yep, scope creep, been there, done that. It is even possible that the other side abuses the contract to push you into terminating it and pay the termination fee. Been there too. Though it could also be the other way around, that the developer created a game that's way below expectations, but they refused to fix it, claiming they fulfilled their part of the contract, and all complaints are based on overinterpretations. This is why it's good to make a clear statement of work with the goals and what the different parts are. I mean, that was just the so many times whatever business partners I've had at the time, have loved having that, because the client comes back, well, hey, there's some great stuff in here. I want this and this. It's like, okay, well, that's out of scope of the contract. Let's build out what we have, and then we can talk about adding on all these additions for additional money. And so, I mean, if you've got a clearly written statement of work, that's that would really help you out there. And I mean, if you didn't do that, if you made a sloppy contract, well, that's kind of on you, isn't it? Personal responsibility here. And yeah, abusing you and pushing you into terminating it. Yeah, they had a couple of clients once they actually tried bringing us into court, even after they totally just blew off their side of the contract and just didn't do any of the things they said they were going to do. They took us to court for some screwy reason. I mean, it was small claims court. We weren't talking about a whole lot of money, but even still, they got this big shyster lawyer in there to try and snow us, but the magistrate was having none of that. So yeah, I've been there and I sympathize, but I don't think it's going to be better without government, and I think it's going to be, make sure you write a good contract or write a good statement of work, and make sure what's in scope and what's out of scope. Scope creep will get you.
Whenever I encounter government apologists, I'm like, what has these specific government agencies ever done to improve your life personally? Like, when's the last time you thanked the ATF for coming in and taking a bunch of people's guns?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, something like we're seeing now. I don't remember if this was on a podcast or one of the videos I did, but at some point I was talking about the small farmers who have been trying to step in and cover for the beef. And we've the big plants aren't able to get enough beef out there because they have to make sure they're not contaminated. They have to test their employees, and if their employees, test positive or are symptomatic, then they have to stay home, things like that, so they're not able to meet demand. Well, there's all these local farmers with all this livestock, and they come in and say, hey, we'll do it. They can't because they're not in the USDA system. And that's the problem, because that favors, the big farms, and it's hard for the little guy to get into that, even in like this national emergency situation. So
yeah, the regulations designed to help the little guy are doing the so.
Yeah. That's what it's about. But it's harder for the government to take crypto, I would think. Venezuela's doing it. Venezuela says, hey, you want to pay your taxes in crypto? We'll take it. What does it say when Venezuela's ahead of the curve on that? Of course, it's mostly necessary because I think that by now they know their currency is down the crap hole. The bolivar is just completely worthless at this point. So, all right. If there's nothing else on this question, then I guess we'll go back and deal with Chris's. And I'm sorry he would miss out on participating in this, but this is something we've talked about before. He asks, how come in a lot of dystopian sci-fi novels, while the writer does a good job at showing the tyranny of big government and Orwellian spying, why do so many sci-fi authors say in their novel, the solution to this problem is socialism? I think it's just because they don't know economics.
Well, I always look at like Star Wars, Han Solo, and like he's got illegal guns. He's doing all these anarchy things, and
he's a rogue.
Yeah.
Clash Pride says Bolivar more like toilet paper / kindling. No, I think toilet paper is worth more because people were trying to buy toilet paper with Bolivar and they couldn't. Like, just use the Bolivar. Well, it's not as good as one. It's not even good for toilet paper. Yeah, and I think also socialism is kind of easy. It's very simplistic, which is why it doesn't work in the real world. But, actually setting up a situation where people have developed solutions through spontaneous order, that's a lot more difficult to do. I mean, science fiction writers have done it. L. Needle Smith did a really good job of in The Probability Brooch.
Down with capitalism, but give me my latte, give me my Big Mac.
Yeah.
Give me my car.
Yeah.
My Apple computer.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's not just novels, but movies as well. I think they just don't know how to conceive of anything else. But I mean, socialism, as we've seen, leads to big government and Orwellian spying. In fact, it's funny you said Orwellian, because 1984 was a socialist government. That's what INGSOC stood for, English Socialism. So,
I really need to read.
Finally, I've returned.
Yay!
I had run my cat. I'd run my dog back over to my yard because he was taking shit from the neighbors, and I was really no.
Yep.
And I had to run a couple cats off from over there, so that's another no I had to correct. And then I had to fight a cat who tries to steal your food when she gets on the counter. God, Tiger Lily is so bad.
That's why I don't have cats. I don't like cats. As for the dog, that's why I have a fenced-in backyard. Just let him out. The Moon is a Harsh Mistress. Yeah, that's a good one. Except that society didn't really last very long. And man was thinking at the end about, well, maybe the asteroids would be a nice place to move to. Because no sooner, did they fly their Tonstoffel flag that they were already thinking about how to make a bigger government. So, yeah. Wes, what we were talking about was the tendency of sci-fi authors to say that, okay, here's this problem with big government and Orwellian spying. Why do they keep saying the solution is socialism?
Yeah. That's never about a political power. Yeah, that's not a bad Bronze Age ideology. No.
I mean, it's hard to build out a world like that. If you go to the Discord, Mystic Jojo talks about how they try to build out worlds and think through it. And I mean, it's a lot of thought and planning that goes into it. And I think socialism is just something that they can just take a shortcut doing. Which, I mean, from a storytelling aspect is fine if that's not actually the purpose of the story. If the story is not what kind of world they make as a solution, but what happens to the characters and things like that. If that's not your focus, there's nothing wrong with formulaic storytelling as long as the formula you're working doesn't interfere with the actual storytelling that you're doing.
Yeah. Pretty interesting subject.
Yeah. Well, and it's like if you make a bad guy, and the bad guy is just this cartoonish guy, and you say, well, that's not a very well thought out character. Well, I mean, if you're wanting the bad guy to be a real character that interacts and does things, then yes, that would be a bad way of doing it. But if the bad guy is just a MacGuffin, if he's just there to kind of get the other players doing their thing, then it would probably make sense to not spend a whole lot of time establishing it, because it's not really important to what you're wanting to do.
Shane, I wanted to ask you, since you've lowered the price it is to ask a question, have you seen more questions?
Well, considering I think this is the first month, and so we've had 4 questions, which is, I mean, give it a couple months and just see what happens. So far, no one's asked for a shout out. If you're a $5 supporter, you can ask for a shout out. So far, no one's taken advantage of that, but we'll see.
I'd like a 30-minute monologue on how great I am, Shane.
Yeah, not 30 minutes. It will be a shout out. It will be quick. Yeah. I was looking on, what's it called, socialbluebook.com or something like that, and it's saying like a shout out on my channel would be worth like $25, and a 30-second spot would be worth like $150 or something like that. It's like, I really don't imagine people paying that much. But if I'm wrong, if you want to pay me that much to do it, I'll do it. But we'll see how $5 goes for shout outs.
Yeah.
Shane endorses Chaz. What do you think about Chaz, by the way? I've heard anarchists like Kokesh say that's a great thing, but they just have the wrong politics.
Well, it's because, they've got this idea that, property is bad, so we'll just all do our own thing. And it turns out that people want different things. Some people want to, make a garden and have no idea how to make a garden. And then other people want to come by and destroy it. If you don't have a concept of property rights, then there's no way you can organize that and prevent things like that from happening.
Even the mutualists have to see to that point, and the syndicalists, for fuck's sakes. That's another thing too. I've never met a damn leftist who could actually meme or actually have a damn green thumb.
Yeah, well, I think it's because most of them were just, raised, rich or at least upper middle class, suburban white people,
Oh, yeah. Like me.
Yeah, they don't know what they're doing. They've never baled hay. They've never fed cows. I've done all that.
Yes, sir. I have too. In fact, my dad, when he was in North Louisiana. He went to school. He went to the same high school as Conway Twitty, by the way.
Cool.
But he grew up picking cotton out of the cotton fields when he was a child. Like he was growing up during the Depression and shit, doing that stuff, and they paid maybe nickels at best. And another country singer, that black country singer, one of my favorite ones, Charlie Pride was doing the same thing at a similar time over in Mississippi and whatnot, if I remember correctly. I told you about my story about the cockfighters, so I have experience in raising birds. I've raised geese and ducks a couple times before. I've helped this little 90-year-old black man. I met him. This dude was so little scrawny, 90, I think he's 94, 95 now, and he could walk a huge ass monster hog up, or he can walk a decent sized hog into a cattle trailer or a pig trailer by himself. And one generation younger than me would take two of them. I was like, this dude's badass.
Yep.
And I've helped relatives rope and not wrestle rope. I've helped them like give medicine and help needles and stuff. Help them give medicine and needles to like bulls and stuff and whatnot. But like I said before, like told Francis, but when they would charge everybody else, like the young bulls would calm around me because they nudge my head and stuff, rub against my hand, and whatnot. I would help keep calm, and they'd shoot them with the needle.
Yep. Yeah, I've spent some time behind a Troy-built tiller. When we used to go out, but we had a one of those composters that you turned around, and every now and then we go out into the cow pasture and we get cow pats, and you have to wait until they turn white because then the bacteria has pretty much done their job. You pick those up and you put them in the composter and do that. And I've heard of like a bunch of would-be commies and things like that trying to do that with human excrement. No, don't do that. Cows, it works because they're naturally herbivores, genetically, and as far as their digestive system and the natural flora that's in there, that their excrement makes for much better compost. But human, I suppose if you were really, really sure that all the bacteria had finished its job and had gotten out of there, then you could do it. But
just so you know, Chaz was not real communism, by the way.
Of course it wasn't, because it failed. If it had been real communism, it wouldn't have failed.
Yeah, there's your infinity excuse. Your infinity of excuses. Put new names here. Let's make Hans Hermann Hoppe run it. Let's make Rothbard run it. Let's make Shane Killian run it. It'll be communism then. You'll never run out of excuses with this backpedal. This will do every fucking time.
And yeah, JC, I think it has pretty much collapsed now, and
that was a good laugh.
I don't know if this was Chaz or one of the others, but there was one where the mayor was all about, oh no, they're just peaceful people doing their things until they tried to march in on her mansion, and then she all of a sudden said, hey, these are dangerous people, we need to send the police in.
Imagine that.
When it was on her doorstep.
Oh yeah,
amazing.
But no, we're just a bunch of crazies. We're just a bunch of extremists. We're lowbirds.
Yeah.
Bite my ass.
But that's all the questions. If no one has anything more to talk about, we'll do the proper live stream benefit for the patrons when I get back from vacation.
I did want to ask one question. I did have
one
to ask. I had it on the other. I put it on one of the AMA sections and typed it, but I'll ask it here. What if I told you, in 2013, some algae researchers figured a way to convert algae oil into straight petroleum?
I read about that. I thought that was interesting. What, wasn't Exxon doing that research?
I don't know. I don't think it was Exxon. I actually have the Science Direct link.
It was one of the big oil companies was doing that because, the line we get is, oh, oil companies are just, they're all against that and they're going to move into something. And it's just the opposite. They're actually trying to research ways of doing things like biofuels because that would be a huge way for them to make money. It's just a really, really difficult problem to solve.
That and people that want to do biodiesel, I'm sorry, but you're going to have to listen to David Bloom on this one. You're going to have here's what it takes to make biodiesel more practical. Aquaponic hemp is going to be an essential. because it does the cleanest emissions of all of them. But you can aquaponics grow it, and you can have multiple times over yields per acre, and have multiple acres, and have the shit stacked. So you can even do more on top of that. So 2, you're gonna have to have the biodiesel, instead of big scale, hardball, centralized capitals, you're gonna have to disperse the infrastructure just a little bit, make it medium to large scale, but disperse it out closer to where the actual feedstocks grow, so you don't have all that trucking back and forth, and you'll have less energy put in than it takes to get out. And you're gonna have to have what they call ultrasonicated biodiesel reactors, essentially biodiesel making units that they pulse ultrasonic waves through them to make them react faster, so it's a fraction of the energy needed to actually get the same reaction. It's a lot quicker. The glycerin and soaps will just settle out within an hour at the most severe. That's if you're messing with the real dirty shit, but a lot of time it'll go from hours down to minutes. And you're gonna have to, and David Bloom predicted this, you're gonna have to do what the ED95 people are doing, which is an ethanol, 95% ethanol with a little bit of a lubricant and an ignition additive to that, so it'll actually burn like diesel. I think you're going to have to blend biodiesel with a majority of ethanol, and then add your additive to that, your ignition additive. And
I just can't help thinking it would be much more effective to make nuclear the basis of our electrical generation and move to electric cars.
Oh yeah, I agree.
That would be the best way to do that.
That's the absolute best way. And then what you could do with the coal afterwards is turn it to synthetic natural gas. That way you don't have all them nuclear fucking fuel salts in the ashes floating in the fucking air. Oh, I agree.
Yeah. Well, the coal ash ponds, you just use those to get thorium.
Thorium and uranium in some cases. So you have both.
Or even some of the smaller radioactive elements can be used in a fast breeder reactor or something like that.
Or you can make a special type of oscillator tube built off of the concept of Thomas Henry Morey. A lot of these free energy conspiratards out there kind of have ruined his stuff for many years, but there's legitimacy to his work. The oscillator tube is if it's built correctly, would be a very powerful amplifier and an RC oscillator. You could actually make a generative electronic solid state and gas tube hybrid generator that could take those nano antennae that can pull infrared rays out of the that come out of the earth and from space at night and turn them into electricity. But that oscillator, built correctly, the Thomas Morey version oscillator tube, if it's built correctly, which does require fuel salts, it's able to it's able to put out a lower frequency current than the terahertz. You're going to need a lot of stages for that device, though. Of a device like this, going to have a bunch of stages, so more of those oscillator tubes of that design will be able to put out lower frequency current, so you don't blow the shit out of everything for trying to run it. Because trying to hook that up to an electrical outlet, you'll blow up a house almost like a bomb.
Yeah.
Because terahertz, we don't have anything to handle that. Because at best, we have like nuclear, like they use radio wave heated fusion or whatever, or stuff like that. Microwave heated like reactors would start, and they're only in the 300 to 400 gigahertz frequency. We ain't even hit a terahertz yet.
Well, fusion is another thing that's taking a while because they've got it running like in the lab, as proof of concept, but they can't get. You have to get more energy out of it than you put into it, and they're not at that point yet because they have to get things that are friggin' hot to get the fusion to work.
Actually, speaking of that, I wish I made bets with I wish I met some people to make $100 bets with, so I'd be sitting on some dough right now and some gold. Even sooner, because I was telling friends of mine back in 2016. There's going to be 2 nuclear reactor concepts that are most likely to get even just a tiny bit past break even. They said, which one are you betting on? I said, it's either the Polywell fuser or the Focus Fusion plasma pinching fusion device, or DPF. I'm betting on the DPF because it's been done before. It's the first reactor to make fusion. Based off simple deduction off of that, I think with the right tech, focused fusion will be the one to make actual fusion results a little bit past break even before anyone else does. And I got it right. It's 2016 around May. Focus fusion made a fourth of a joule past break even. Now that reactor itself, if you tweaked it a certain way and made it a very efficient neutron generator, you could actually take that neutron generator device that's a little past break even and put 25 megawatts of that into to make neutrons to transmute nuclear wastes to make more raw thermal power that could be used to spin more generators and make many megawatts more electricity off the same reactor. Be another stage with liquid lead cooling, and it's all kind of crazy shit. But you could do it with the focus fusion device. You made one like that, made it a neutron generator. The only problem is the tungsten electrode is going to have to be changed ever so often because it'll start to vaporize and corrode and vaporize and get transmuted and it'll start to obliterate itself after a while. So they want to experiment with a beryllium electrode to see if that's going to happen. I don't
Yay,
know.
Forest Sparrow! Forest Sparrow made Eggleston dance with a $4.99 donation. It says, pair character lifting some weights saying keep it up. I will, Forest Sparrow. Thank you very much.
So yeah, that's all I had to say about that. But
yeah,
they did make past break even, but it's not enough to be anything meaningful, and they got to try new electrode tech first. That's easier said than done. Try fabricating a big ass electrode of beryllium crystal. Good luck with that. That's kind of. I've been
looking at the latest things they're doing experimentally with molten salt reactors, and I think they've got those things to the point where they could basically run on anything. Because initially they were just for thorium, and so the question was, can we use uranium? Can we use the reclaimed weapons material in it? Can we use nuclear waste? And yeah, the experiments they're doing with the molten salt reactor says, yeah, if it's nuclear, you can use it. you can get something out of it.
Yeah, and the fuser system being experimented with as a way of recycling waste since I think since I was 17, around 2009. God, that was a hell of a year for me. I think it was when they got some results off of that. That's when they started publishing those results.
Yeah, if we could get the idiots to stop opposing nuclear power, we could do so much.
No shit. Our electricity bills would be a fraction of what they are right now. It'd be easier to maintain. And the mining of that, you could just take it out of coal. Let the coal be converted to synthetic natural gas and send it to algae plants to turn into petroleum. You could hold it. Well, I mean, plastics.
even if you're not doing that, the coal miners are already bringing up thorium along with the coal. So I mean, one of the oppositions of it is like the coal miners unions and things like that saying we'll be out of a job if you're using thorium power. No, you won't. Keep doing what you're doing. We'll take the thorium.
We'll take the thorium off you coal miners.
Yep.
But you can also, the coal miners, if they made the synthetic natural gas infrastructure and other synthetic fuel gas infrastructures, which is you have to do a catalyst change, certain catalytic reactors, to certain reactor beds to make different combinations of hydrogen and carbon monoxide bond together to make different molecules. Certain ones will make long change. You need if you're going to stick to the fuel gas industry, you're going to have to figure out what makes propane best, what makes methane best, what makes butane, et cetera, et cetera. Now, they're working on that. I know they've gotten methane and natural gas down pat and have for years.
Yeah, methane's easy.
This, and you can also take the ash from left over from that gasification and add to thorium on top of the thorium you get just straight out of mining, and the coal miners will get paid more, and the natural gas people will get paid more because they've been stomped on by petroleum fucking ever through regulatory capture, which is something Mark Rauch or whatever his name is talked about it. He wrote a book called The Ethanol Papers I found very, very enlightening. He got a few things, a couple spots wrong, I think, but he was very enlightening in that book. He has it online on his website, the Auto Channel. I like that guy.
Yeah. And also
yeah.
petroleum is used to make plastic and things like that. I mean, it's just really useful.
Oh, yeah.
So,
petroleum still be around for that. There's no doubt. And some other things, too. You could...
Yeah, why are the idiots saying that plastic, since it's made from petroleum, contributes to global warming? You're not burning it.
You're not burning it. You're actually holding it in place.
Yeah.
And by the way, a little fun fact for you guys, if any of you out there are kind of health nutty about it, and worried about leaching, high-density polyethylene type 2, or HDPE number 2, is the most chemically inert of all the plastics they found so far.
JC Armitage is the typical response, but my Chernobyl, Fukushima, though, is what they end up crying. Illinois Energy Prof, I think is the name of the YouTube channel. He does a really good job of explaining at least concepts with nuclear power. And he has videos where he goes over what happened at Chernobyl, what happened at Fukushima, what happened at 3 Mile Island. How did that go wrong? And, he also has videos on, the latest, Generation 4 reactors and how they would work. And you'd see how those disasters are completely impossible. I mean, a molten salt reactor, you don't have to worry about a meltdown because it's already melted. It works melted. That's how it is.
And of course, we haven't made any progress since the 1980s.
No. 1978 was the last time we did any new designs for nuclear power. Yeah,
U.S., yeah, and that's a crock of shit.
Yeah.
France, Germany, all the best self-sufficient powerhouses in Europe, India, Japan finally nutted up and said, let's try to generate Gen 3 and a Gen 4. This old school reactor's not working. It's just gonna run away until it runs out of fuel down there at Fukushima. Let's forget that one. Let's try these later gen ones. And they're running okay. Many countries around the world fucking doing these already. No, let's pedal for fucking griftomony because we're fraudulent assholes and we can't get our thumb out our asses and tell the truth.
Flashbright says 3 Mile Island was really close to where my dad lived. I live less than 2 miles as the crow flies from a nuclear reactor. It's a PWR. I think it's basically the same design as 3 Mile Island and from that era. And you can have tours go through there. My stepsister and her husband both work there, actually, but you can take tours through there. And the one thing, they mention on every tour is why 3 Mile Island could never happen there. Yeah, and I mean, it is just mind-blowing, all of the things they have in place to make it safe. And Illinois Energy Prof will go over all of that, so check that channel out. Also, I've heard rumors that the Soviet Union sabotaged Chernobyl in order to scare the West into not using nuclear power. That would make no sense whatsoever. They were trying to show off and do this amazing experiment for how they could get, so much more energy out of Chernobyl, and they screwed up the experiment. Now, screwing up the experiment wouldn't have been so bad if they had just said, okay, let's leave well enough alone, put it off till tomorrow, let the system stabilize and go from there. But they were like insistent on trying to get the power back up, but xenon had already started to build up, and that's a big problem. You really have a problem getting the reactions going again.
Gas as a coolant or something, or was it a product?
No, it was a product, I think.
Okay, thanks for clarifying. I was wondering.
Yeah, it's a byproduct.
Thing, there's a book I read about biology concentrates. I'm getting it real quick. It's by a guy named Roland Thomas. There's a guy named Michael Curiot. He was actually testing this stuff in Chernobyl. And in the book, there's some records on it. There was over 140, holy shit, There was over 146,000 cleanup worker personnel and over 160,000 children that were affected by this. What they did was they gave them 5 grams of this algae concentrate every I forgot how many times a day for 20 days, and the urination rate of radiation, they peed out half the radiation they did before they started. The blood and liver and spinal fluids, bone marrow started to generate, and their white blood cell count started coming back up to normal levels, and it's incredible stuff. Essentially, without this guy, Michael Kiriak, I could probably say the USSR would have probably just died then, but in the most unsavory, horrid, atrocious way that would have led to the lives of many of children and woman and man dying unnecessarily.
Yeah, well, they did anyway. I mean, that's pretty much the story of communism.
They did, but it would have happened a lot sooner and in a far shittier manner than what had happened.
Yeah.
Without this, and that's a little something else. That helps with the radioactive poisoning problem.
Yeah, Clash Pride, we did the field trip too. They do that. They still do that. I think the going on the field trips to the nuke plant.
There's a lot of incredible research out there.
But I mean, it's just amazing when you try to point out, like that Canadian physicist. I think it was a physicist, nuclear, something like that. But he was trying to figure out how much, radioactive stuff got into the environment from Fukushima, that you actually had to worry about that was doing all that. And basically the answer he ended up with was none. It was such a small amount that after it gets into the environment, it's just part of the background radiation anyway. And he got death threats. So it's not like these people are saying, well, we believe you're incorrect about nuclear power because, Chernobyl shows the risks of it. No, this is like a freaking cult or something with them. You attack their religion and they try and kill you.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Oh, hell yeah. I forgot, there was one guy that was trying to come up with I think it was a fuel delivery system that tried to use plasma pinching to crack fuel vapors. Or some shit. I'm trying to remember. He proposed he might trial his device on running an engine and cleaning up the radioactive wastewater as part of the fuel reforming. See if it would clean it up. I think it was a story, and I didn't think it received too well. And the reason was, I think politicians get paid billions to just get these fancy ass metal canisters and bury the shit.
Hey, we got a super chat from Clash Pride. Eccleston hasn't popped up yet, but he will in a minute. Yeah, there he is. Yeah, $10 from Clash Pride. Thank you so much for that. The question is, how do you think is the best way to achieve a stateless society? I know that you were a big guy on a lot of campaign trails, but I want to see if you changed your mind. Well, we talked about this earlier. It's just about really building out the alternatives. We've been doing a lot of that. We have cryptocurrencies as an alternative to fiat money. The more we build out alternatives, I think the time is ripe now for people saying, okay, we need an alternative to the police system. Not just simply defund the police, which is a meaningless mantra, but saying, what are the things that we can do to actually say, hey, we want our tax money to go to these other guys because you're doing a crappy job. The more we can build in competition and take away the government's monopoly power, that's really the problem. It's the government's monopoly power. It has
and everybody and all the left-wingers that rant on corporations, I said, I hate to bust your bubbles, but one, a liability levying entity is going to show up in a stateless society, but the problem is it's created and offered by government, and it gives perks that can loophole the law of the land, which these modern ones are. That point, it goes far back as the book Modern Corporation and Private Property, how corporate manager staffs can bridge with bureaucracy and gradually rip private property over time and disperse it out and through legal policies. and lobbying and bribing as well, which politicians are legally able to do, which is crock. And
Yeah, I mean, you got
that. But it's all government at its core. It's not the business. It's the fucking government creating an entity that's at the expense of the laws of the land and of the people in the society, not the businesses themselves. When you give someone the incentive, they're going to use it, even if it's shitty.
Well, and you have these same people saying, oh, well, you know, monopolies are bad, like Standard Oil, which was never a monopoly and was arguably a net good for society. But that's a monopoly and that's bad. But government making your local power company a monopoly, your local cable company a monopoly, you know, your fire department is a monopoly. You know, why are those monopolies good? You know, monopoly on police, monopoly on courts, monopoly on all these other things.
Oh my God! That reminds me of Kyle Kalinske, that fucker.
Oh yeah.
Saying, oh, well, these private ones were the ones that did it, lying through his fucking teeth. It was the fucking Fed. It was Fed-funded ones that did the shit he was talking about. That lying fucker.
I
I hate that son of a bitch.
All right. Darth wants to speak. What you got to say, Darth?
Right. I saw this meme. It was a conservative in the AR-15 saying, "Why don't call 911?" And then the next frame is like, "But don't touch my police."
I don't get it.
Because like, you know, we don't need the police because we have guns, but don't get rid of the police because.
Okay.
I found that comical.
Okay, I'd probably have to see it. Scorch asks, will anyone be voting for JoJo? Right here, yeah, Jo Jorgensen, I love her. I remember when she was Harry Brown's running mate. Well, one thing I loved from her, there hadn't been a lot of campaigning now because of COVID. She's made a few videos. I think it's mostly Spike Cohen, her VP candidate, who's been more out there. But back in '96, she had said something that just really stuck with me. I absolutely loved it. She was talking about, because everyone says, oh, well, you know, why don't you come over with the Republicans, work with the Republicans? The Republicans are just like libertarians. And she said that the Republicans are just like 1-900 operators, which was that era's, you know, equivalent of a cam girl or something like that. And they say, they ask you what you want, and then they say they want the same thing. They get excited and they start breathing heavy. And they woo you and they tempt you and they promise you the world and tell you that you're going to get everything you want and how great it's going to be when you finally get it. And when it's all over, you realize three things. And the first thing you realize is they've got your money. The second is the real thing is a lot better. And the third is they were never going to come over.
Hey, I want to make a real short response to JC real quick. I can play this bit. JC said their support for monopoly security on security is even more hilarious when they cry about how all the police are racist. All I gotta say to you is this:
You're racist.
I saw.
Hang on, I wonder if I still have it. Hang on.
I saw a picture of someone talking to Jo Jorgensen on Facebook. He asked, if you get elected, can I own an Abrams tank? And she said, I believe anyone can have any weapon that the government has. And he's like, okay, I'm in.
I don't see that I have it. Somewhere on this computer, and I don't know if it will play through the Discord anyway, but it'll play on the live stream. But I've got the clip of, you know, Bob Murphy as a zombie going, racism!
Hail Confederate!
Yeah. Slavery!
I love the outtake where Tom Woods was coming close to shit himself. He couldn't stop. He was fucking crying.
Did y'all hear that my state of Mississippi, they're getting rid of the old flag?
No.
Placing it.
Oh, well.
Because it has the Confederate flag in the
yeah.
What do they call that corner part? I forget what it's called. Yeah. The thing I think is hilarious is they were saying the Dukes of Hazzard is racist, when the Dukes of Hazzard is probably one of the least racist TV shows that's ever been on television.
No shit.
Yeah.
You actually could argue that it was probably, I think, honestly, look, John Schneider, a lot of the people there did not come from the South. They actually came from this North. A couple of them came from the South and Midwest, but your biggest star there he would just turn 18 when they started. They let him in on some loopholes because he had the height and he had every measurement they wanted for the character. I think it was Luke, I believe, or Bo. I forgot which Duke it was. And he comes from New York, right smack dab in the middle of New York.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, but I mean, when you're talking about depiction of blacks, I mean, and even when you compare it to shows made 10 years later like Seinfeld or Cheers or Friends or whatever, the Dukes of Hazzard had more black guest stars for the number of episodes than almost any show of that century. You probably have to go into the 21st century to find it. And they were all very positively portrayed. Most of them were like, people in authority, like, an FBI agent would come there and the Dukes would work with him trying to take down Boss Hogg, and it wouldn't work, of course, because you wouldn't have a TV show if it worked. But I mean, it was, they were very decent portrayals of black people.
Oh, yeah. I'm trying to remember if Charlie Pride ever showed up on their show or not.
I think he did. Yeah. Yeah.
I love that guy. I'm glad my dad introduced me to him. So that man, great.
Yeah, I mean they had all the greats on there.
Oh yeah, Johnny Paycheck on there. Take this job and shove it.
For people who haven't seen the show, generally what they would do, I don't think they would do this every episode, but they'd kind of leave a few minutes of runtime at the end, and they'd have a country music singer, and the story would be that Boss Hogg would be running, what do they call it, a celebrity speed trap, and Roscoe would pull this big country music star over for singing, and they had an alternative for how they could, they had their choice for what they could do to pay off their speeding ticket. They could pay, $100 or $500 or whatever it was, and it would take a month and they'd have to show up in court. Or they could play one song at Boss Hogg's place, because he had a restaurant or a bar or something like that, and so that's how he'd get the big country music stars in there too.
And you know what? I think that was the last time. I think his name was Gomer Pyle.
Oh, Jim Neighbors.
Huh?
Yeah. Jim Neighbors.
No, what was it? The guy that played. I'm trying to remember. Who was the guy that played Uncle Jesse?
Oh, Denver Pyle.
Denver Pyle. That's who it was.
Denver Pyle.
Yeah. I think that was the last time we ever saw him on TV. Was that series? On
TV, maybe he had a small role in Maverick. And I think he may have done a couple other movies, but yeah, that was his last major thing.
No, he's been. Denver Pyle was all over the place. Like my first. I think when I was a kid, and I was watching Gunsmoke, and they introduced Festus Hagen, crazy hillbilly, do it all, rough, tough, ready to knock the shit out of you in a second, get it like you want to ugly on an ape. And,
or the life and times of Grizzly Adams, and he was Mad Jack in that. I watched that all the time as a kid.
Yeah, Gunsmoke. It basically Denver Pyle was the Uncle Blackjack Hagen, the one that was like, "I'll help you, little man. It's the first one I ever worked with. Oh, I'd like to see a hanging. Let's see what happens." Well, they had to shoot him because he had ambushed both of them towards the end.
Yeah. J.C. Armitage is talking about how they got Aunt Jemima to change the brand logo to combat racism when, I forget her name, but the woman behind the image of Aunt Jemima, I mean, that was really a success story. A woman who was born a slave and then ended up becoming the face of this company and was just well loved by people all over the country. Yeah. And she would go out and she would be the face of Aunt Jemima. and going under the name of Aunt Jemima. But I mean, she knew all about, how to cook and things like that. And so she would be, it was basically like her own cooking show, except they didn't have TV back then. But of course, they'd be working Aunt Jemima products. I think it was just the syrup back then. I'm not sure if they had any others, but
if they really cared about people, they'd ban the syrup itself because it's so sugary and diabetes.
Yeah.
Diabetes.
Yeah, and also like the Land O'Lakes Indian is going away, and I saw a funny meme about that because they still have that landscape in the background, and there was like, yeah, typical American, get rid of the Indian and keep the land.
That's brilliant because it's so fucked up but true. That's almost half of my bloodline too. Oh God.
Scorch asks, what are some good examples of government letting its power go? I like to use USSR and the British Empire. Well, neither one of those were exactly voluntary. There were like wars involved in economic collapse and disaster and things like that.
Guess we're going 2 hours tonight.
For as long as the conversation goes. I'm just seeing what else.
My dad, I remember my dad named, we had the last bird I had, she was our pet. I used to be able to pick her up, hold her, and pet her and all that. We called her Jemima Puddle Duck after the Beatrix. Dad got it. Dad named her partially after Aunt Jemima and then partially after Beatrix Potter's book story on her, on the character. So it's kind of both inspired him.
Yeah.
And when we talked about Jemima, that reminded me of her. I miss that dog. She was a mallard, by the way, a full-blown mallard, female. Had gotten her from the wild and stuff.
I mean, it's just like people are seeing, racism everywhere, and they're saying we should get rid of all these racist historical figures. Well, by today's standards, they're saying like, oh, well, all these, Confederate figures and all these other, who else prior to 1900 was racist by today's standards? Everyone. I mean,
everybody.
Yeah. Society progresses. This is what happens.
And then they talk about like businesses shouldn't allow to be racist, but I would actually prefer that for a couple reasons. One, because we would know that they are racist, and we can decide not to support them financially.
Exactly. Yes.
You can decide to flip them off and say, "Fuck you! I will not give you a single penny, and you are not going to extort it out of me with the government. Fuck you!" And go back to somebody else.
And I can set up a business right next to them and take all the customers they won't take.
They want to have a restaurant and say no, N-words allowed. I'll set up a restaurant across the street and say black people welcome.
I would too.
I'll take their money.
In fact, I serve soul. I make soul food here at the house from time to time. And I drink iced tea and shit. They're more than welcome to come by anytime.
Yeah, I mean, I never really understood, like, it seems like elsewhere in the country, you've got all of these things about, a stereotype of black people, eating watermelon and fried chicken. And I'm like, but around here, everyone eats watermelon and fried chicken.
Shit,
it's like they're taking...
My dad was alive. Not that we had helped rebuild 3 mowers one summer. We both got about 4 watermelons, full-sized ones. We had us a bunch of home fried chicken. We ate on the fried chicken when we sucked down the watermelons. We both killed the cup. I think we both each ate a cup of watermelons, whole ones apiece.
It's like all of these other people in the country are confusing Southern culture with black culture. And it's like, because occasionally I'll exaggerate, my Southern accent, it's, my speaking voice I've been working on, but that's kind of more my natural accent, maybe slightly exaggerated. But then people will say, well, why are you trying to imitate a black person? I'm like, I'm not imitating a black person. I'm using my southern accent. You know.
I remember when I trolled BLM advocates on Facebook. I showed them some actual, hard facts. I was like, here's another whole ideology, and they started reposting like these memes that taught Ebonics street. It said, dude, if this bitch show up, what would you do? I said, I replied, first off, I would go get hooked on phonics because I'm speaking terrible fucking Ebonics. I must be an illiterate bastard. That pissed off my mom.
Yeah, I'm going to give the internet to JC Armitage for this. And I'm sorry, I was trying to keep from laughing in the middle of what you're saying. But he says, the woke mob says that Aunt Jemima is a racist depiction. But I'm not really seeing how it is. I also don't know what exactly they want it replaced with. Karen the welfare queen, perhaps? That was good. That was good. Clash Pride says, I cook fried chicken for a job. Well, I cook fried chicken because I like fried chicken. That's why I cook fried chicken.
So, Shane, I have a two question for you.
Sure.
Have you heard of Live Patch?
Live Patch?
Yeah.
Oh,
No,
sorry,
I
I
haven't.
had to cough. Oh, that was
So
a
what-
good cry.
So what's Live Patch?
Apparently, it's a feature where you can update your operating system without having to restart the computer. I was just curious if you knew if it was something I should enable or not.
Well, you're talking about Windows, I take it.
No,
Because
this is all Ubuntu.
Well, because with Linux, really the only reason why you would have to restart the operating system is if you upgrade the kernel. I don't know of anything else that really requires a restart. And how are you going to update the kernel without restarting? That sounds like a dangerous prospect to me. Trying to unload the old kernel and load the new one in while it's up and running.
Guess I should leave as it is.
I mean, I'll check it out. They probably know a lot more than I do, but well, yeah, Windows. It's amazing the number of things that you have to restart. Although none of it was as bad as the Macintosh before OS 10. I mean, you installed anything on that, and it wanted to restart. It's like, oh my god, can you not do anything without restarting?
Yeah, the decision to switch to Linux was the greatest.
Well, it's not Linux, it's Darwin, but that's another flavor of Unix, yeah. Same kind of thing. That was a good move. That was when Steve Jobs came back. You know, because they were like, okay, we're sorry, Steve Jobs. You were the best thing that ever happened to us. You're the whole reason why we exist. And we shouldn't have drummed you out like that because we were stupid.
I was talking about me personally switching to this thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Apple just kind of just pulls you into their little cult when you start using their stuff.
You like my iPhone though?
Yeah.
You know what sounds like a better idea to me than what we're doing, the iPhones and all that. How about we get rid of minimum wage for these jobs? How about we fix the insurance system because it's so foobarred?
Mm-hmm.
3, instead of child labor laws, if I really wanted to suck dicks of those who advocate this, how about instead have laws either contractual by the company, backed by a government, or without, or both? Have laws in place. If we're gonna really kiss ass to this one, to the advocates, have laws in place that would protect the children if they come from a very bad environment. Make sure they're protected and actually treated decently, and not treated like a bunch of, you know how they do goats in the Middle East. To get my analogy across. Ugh.
Yeah.
They don't just milk and make meat out of them. Ugh. For the analogy here.
Yeah. We got it.
There you go.
Yeah.
And you could do that over here. you actually be able to afford an apple over here.
Yeah, it's like it's really good stuff, but it costs like 3 times as much as any human being should have to pay for it.
Oh yeah, because just a simple solution. Take care.
Yeah.
If you have kid laborers, take care of them. And make sure they're able to rise up until they're able to.
You're not gonna have child labor in a developed society anyway. The only reason you have child labor, but the only reason you have child labor around the world is because they're so poor they have to, or the family starves. But it's like I always wonder.
That's not an issue. But if you're actually live there for that, and over here, just get rid of all the heavy regulation. It's a developed society that doesn't have to have that anyway. Just get rid of all these fucking stupid regulation and regulatory barriers and get rid of the regulatory capture. Look at the crooked shit Apple's doing. They have to have a right to repair movement before it's over with. I'm guaranteed it.
How many people would love to just give a kid a quarter and have him fill up your gas tank?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be cool. But, I mean, the thing is, people are talking about, well, like, the year 1800 or whatever it was, all these kids were, working, all day long for 10 cents. It's like, well, what did they think? Did they think that the parents were just horrible people? Like every parent in the world was just, completely terrible and wanted their children to suffer? They don't think through things like this.
Oh yeah, it's crazy. Because there's so many no bullshit, practical, solutions economically, and hard science answers, that could get rid of a lot of these problems. And a lot of these problems are just artificial barrier caused problems, and you could trace back to a policy, and you could deduce off of that what's going to happen next.
They can't even have lemonade stands now. It's crazy.
Can't. John Stossel proved that by trying to start one of his own just for a fucking video.
Yep.
I have this friend who's always bitching about income inequality, and I'm like, dude, would you rather everyone be equally poor, or would you rather have opportunity to be able to get out of poverty?
Yep.
And besides
that, they would rather everyone be equal in misery than unequal in prosperity.
Equality. Another thing too. Ever since we went off of the since we went off of the gold standard in 71 or whatever year it was, 71, we have gotten more unequal, and the gap between the wealthy, the escalator started to get pulled apart. The hierarchical escalator networks got slowly ripped, is what I'm getting at here.
CSS in the chat says they could go to public school instead of working, at least according to public schools. Yeah, but they probably learn more on the job than they do in public schools.
Hands-on education's quite a useful tool. It dependent if you're doing a certain line of work, like I did as in the teenagers, until my dad got too sick the year before he died, finally couldn't do it no more. Some of those skills, hands-on learning's a bitch, but they stick with you, or they'll come back to you real quick and you start on them.
Well, I mean, I worked on the farm as a kid. Like I said, I helped, bale hay and things like that. Here's the thing, those child labor laws, they don't apply to farms. Guess why?
I had an uncle that did a lot of that stuff. My uncle was the main one that used to rope horses and would fatten up beef to sell off, stuff like that. So one of them, last bull we worked on was named Black Angus Bull. A preacher they know, he knows named the Black Angus Shadow. I remember it was out in the evening time, and he had a parasite infection. He had to give him some vermifuge shots and medicine. He had an infection too, so he had to give him antibiotic rounds. I never saw a man with an absolutely fucked up disabled leg jump that far that quickly.
Oh man!
When the young bull charged at him, he didn't get his horns yet.
When I was in college, I knew a guy who had lost one leg in an accident, and oh man, he was one of the best athletes I've ever met. And I mean, we go to like just play racquetball or something, just to have fun. I mean, I was never even trying to be that good about it. But he'd kick all our butts. And even when, like, we were swimming and he'd take off his artificial leg to swim, he could still outswim all of us. And there was absolutely nothing about that guy I ever viewed as being disabled.
No. Yeah, and I love Cat Williams' story about that one guy that fucked up and was a runner, and he lost his legs, and he gave him some new kind of paperclip-like legs, and he made him run even faster on. Well, they disqualified him because he outran everybody, or they think he was cheating or whatever. It was a story. Portal tink tink. Tink 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 tink.
Yeah, Clash Pride says the only things he learned was useful was learning Microsoft Office, culinary skills, cooking, and microeconomics. Did they teach you how to manage a household budget? Did they teach you, how to invest money? When you have it saved up? They don't teach you any of those things that are like basic life skills.
But the financial education thing, I forgot what governmental education, or governmentally, bridged educational board it was. I forgot the name of it, but there was a Robert T. Kiyosaki talked about in the video. It started out as a education board that was founded by J.P. Morgan and John Rockefeller. I forgot what policy and education policy they had put in practice. That's what led to the basic financial education to get taken out of schools over time. I forgot what it was. Robert Kiyosaki, there was a video on it. I'll have to link it to you. I'll DM it to you what he talked about. See if you know what I'm talking about.
Flash Pride says, only in my business class and for one day. Yeah, I mean, did you learn the difference between investing in bonds and investing in an S&P 500? Did you learn the difference between an investment account and a hedge fund? Did you learn any of that stuff? They don't teach you any of that. That's really useful stuff to know. Well, like I said, even just managing a household budget.
Let me see. I think I got the video around here somewhere.
Oh, see, yes, you can. I think you can learn anything on YouTube. I forget what it was. I was needing to do something to my car, but I looked it up on YouTube and I searched for that and 2008 Honda Accord, and I found a guy with exactly the same model car as I have doing exactly what I needed to do, and he talked through the whole procedure of how to do it on YouTube. Yeah.
When do you get back from vacation?
Yeah. What was that?
When do you get back from vacation?
I'd have to look at the exact date. I'll pull up the calendar.
You shall be missed.
Thank you. But I think this is well deserved.
Kelly, and I DM'd you the video I was talking about. He mentioned the name of the board and all that stuff. When you feel like you have the time to look into it, you know what he's talking about.
Well, our last day on vacation is the 13th. And, it'll probably be a couple of days, after that, by the time we're properly home and up and running again. And I'm going to try to have videos going up through that week so that basically when I get home, the first thing I'll be working on is the next episode of the podcast, which will be up on the 19th. And then hopefully regular videos after that. So this conversation reminds me of the episode of South Park where Cartman tries to scam his way into the Special Olympics, thinking that, all these disabled kids, are going to be easy to beat, and then he comes in dead last in all the events.
He was at the door trying to... Okay, thanks.
Because he never trained for any of the events.
Someone here?
So they were all better than he was. Okay. Don't even know what an S&P 500 is. Yeah, it's an easy way to invest in stocks. The S&P Standard & Poor, keeps the list of like the 500 top stocks. And if you invest in it's an index. And so if you invest in an S&P 500 index fund, the fund managers are going to be buying and selling stocks based on what S&P says has gone into and out of the 500. And it's a good way to just put your money in, have it as secure as possible. You're not going to get rich quick. There's not any pie in the sky but whatever the stock market does, that's the return you get. And that's actually what it means to invest. You're going to invest in something, and you're going to accept whatever the market return for that is. Speculation is when you try and game the system with better timing or better knowledge or whatever, and trying to do better than the market would. So that's a big important thing there, the difference between investing and speculating. Did you ever learn that? Probably not.
I had an idea, but see, there's a what was it? What the hell was it? I was going to mention there was a new son of a bitch. I was trying to remember there was a breakthrough of research breakthrough of sorts. I'm trying to remember.
While you're thinking about that, J.C. Armitage says, not smoking, drinking, and not having cable goes a long way in managing a budget easier. Yes, it does. It absolutely does.
Oh, yeah. Look it up. Oh, I remember. There was an improvement to generators and motors and alternators and stuff like that. That, you know, the big ass alternator generating units.
Yeah.
They take power from a plant, and a little substation, and they run it through the alternator to beef it up once more, powered by an engine, and then they shoot it down the line again. There was one that they designed. It was a bunch of small coils instead of the conventional, you know, the big, you know, the coils of wire, like the, you know, the 2 or 3 phase, like a big coil of wire. There was a bunch of small coils with all in a circular pattern, and then the rotor inside of that was what, you know, when it, you know, spun against them to generate power. But there was another trick they did too, because it used less iron to do this. This particular design is called the magnetronic generator and the magnetronic motors. They could catch collapsing EMF and some degree back EMF from Lenz's law. They could actually capture a certain amount of it as it started to collapse into a capacitor or a coiler of sorts and pulse it back in there. The inventors of this interpretation of that concept, it's not defying, because you still, you know, it's not defying the laws thrown to next. You have to have some type of mover to drive it, and you're not loopholing Lenz's law. It still comes into effect, but you're capturing some of that, pulsing it back in the system. It's a regenerative thing. So you're going to burn fuel no matter what, and you're going to lose energy no matter what. So,
yeah, that's the second law of thermodynamics. There's no way around it.
But Magnetronic was the name of it. The inventors of it died in a plane crash. Tragically died in a plane crash. The actual inventors and heads of the Millennial Research Corporation, the patent's up there on Google if you ever wanted to see it. If these generators were a mainstream practice right now, you could probably, for the same horsepower, you could probably put through that regenerative process on generators, you could probably put out a lot more electricity. You get more use out of the same, or a lot more useful electrical power. Potential, I don't know exactly, but it's high.
How much?
So Clash Pride says, my teachers implied that investing and speculating are the same things. You know, investing is really just shifting your time preference. You're going to put your money away, have it somewhere, you know, fairly secure, and get it back with a good return on it. Speculating is actually a lot more important than people think. Like, you know, people talk about oil speculators. They're actually pretty vital, because if people start predicting that there's going to be a problem getting oil in the future, then the speculators are going to start buying oil up, expecting the price to rise. So if they're right, which they generally are, thanks to the wisdom of crowds, then when whatever supply shock happens and, you know, oil is not as readily available and the price goes up, they start selling, and that puts this oil they've kind of pulled back. You know, it's kind of like saving it for a rainy day. Well, now the rainy day has come, and so they're going to start selling the oil, and putting it back into the economy, and they're going to keep that price from being as high as it otherwise would be, if it had just caught everyone by surprise. That's what they were saying, like after Katrina and everything. Oh, well, it's the fault of the oil speculators that the price rose. No, they didn't cause it. They just predicted it. And good thing, too, because otherwise it would have been a lot worse. But all right, you were saying, Vega?
It's just a bad joke. How much power does a turbo encabulator use?
How much?
Also, those in there that are in the Bogosity server, I posted the patent references of what I was talking about in the general chat for anyone that's in the server that's willing to take a look at them, explain pretty detailed on what they were trying to do.
So how much power does a turbo encabulator use?
I don't know. I'm asking y'all, Wes. What do you think?
I was waiting for the punchline. I thought this was going to be a joke.
Oh, sorry.
I thought it was going to be a punchline. The turbo encabulator is funny. Watch it and stick it out through the end because the ending is hilarious. Oh my god. And Clash Pride says they demonized investing. I thought, well, if the public school system doesn't like it, then it might not be that bad. Yeah, that's probably a good criteria to use.
We need like a turbo encabulator, but for computers.
Oh, there's probably something like that if you looked around. There's all sorts of stuff like that people have come up with. All right, so is the conversation winding down? Are we ready to wrap things up, or anyone got anything else we want to talk about?
I'm pretty much done. What about you, Wes?
Okay. Well, this was good. We spent...
I was going to mention one more thing if I could find it.
Okay.
Oh. There were some plans about turning a lot of these wastewater treatment facilities into biogas making plants. I was like, one of the biggest problems in conventional farming is the shit and piss slurry lakes that tend to flood out into other waters and cause poisonous red algae blooms to occur in rivers, lakes, and seas, which is a reported actual phenomenon. These type of digesters would actually fix that by entrapping it. And when it broke down, you get the methane gas off, you make compost.
But we basically know how to do that already because landfills use that. They trap the methane, turn it into power.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same concept. I don't know what you'd have.
Concept.
Yeah.
The only difference is you have to use a different unit that's able to modify the existing slurry lakes. Now you're going to have to use the slurry lakes directly as fertilizer after it's all done. The methane gas release. And you have to pipe it, the tanks hauled to the. You need to have your feedlots close to where the shit's growing, so it'll be even more practical. So there's less trucking mileage to deliver. Well, that would be a wholesale solution. You got methane gas to support the natural gas infrastructure, bring the cost of natural gas way down. You have a renewable source, and you make feedlot expenses a lot better, and you boost the sanitation aspects of it even more. The cleaning aspects of the feedlots go up. The cleaning of capabilities. So that's a wholesale solution.
By the way,
create millions more jobs potentially for natural gas companies, for workers in there, and for farmers and general laborers. Hell, you might even get some disabled people, people with disabilities, some part-time work at them, if you're willing.
By the way, one byproduct of the molten salt reactors I was talking about earlier is purified distilled water. And I don't think it would work with wastewater, but it works with like lake water and ocean water if you need to desalinate it or whatever. You just run it through the molten salt reactor and then you get distilled water out of it.
There's your desalination solution. Boom, bitches.
Yeah, I mean, you want to help out like all these remote African, villages and, South America and other places like that where they don't have a whole lot and it's hard for them to, attach up to the grid or anything. Just give them a small MSR. That'll give them power. That'll give them purified water. Yeah.
Shit, yeah. And you'll also they'll also be able to afford more. But a lot of the governments in the world are such little fucking scumbags. They don't want to help those people. They're pieces
No.
of shit.
It can't be a mistake anymore. At first, it probably might have been. It's like, hey, Africans are starving. Let's go give them food. But they know by this point that what they're doing is completely counterproductive, and it's just keeping them down in poverty. They have to.
Back in the earlier 2000s, there was a few reports of people that was wanting to take ships of food out over to Africa, and they were threatened to have their numbers and tags on the boats taken off the freaking record, and they weren't going to be able to come back to that country, their native countries anymore. There's been cases of reports of shit like threats like that.
Well, and there was
I looked them up for me one time. I have lost contact with that person, but if I was still in contact with them, I would be able to pull them. But you could take that to a grain of salt. If not,
but there was an African economist. I mean, like a couple decades ago, I think. It might have even been in the 90s, in the last century. But you can find this online. The article about what he was saying. If you search for the phrase, "For God's sake, stop the aid," and he's going all about the damage that it does to local farmers and things like that. I mean, it's just a really good read. Yeah. And so they have to know it by this point. It can't be well-intentioned ignorance anymore.
Oh yeah, that whole I love how you mentioned about the farming subsidies before. Those subsidies, all the subsidies, they speaking of which, whether you subsidize it or not, you get tax money yoinked out of you I think it's called the beef checkoff tax or whatever. It goes to the NCBA or National Beef Cattle Association. If you look up the very corporate members page, you're going to see Cargill and Conac. You're going to see Cargill, one of the three they call Big Agro, one of the monopolizers of the agro industry. One of the big three or four. I think it was Cargill, Conagra, Monsanto, and I think there was another one. One of the big monopolizers. And then you see, and it's the same ones that they get flat and bastard for being environmentally harmful, and at times they are. They've done some shit. They have, but they're pushing that fake meat stuff, right? They're pushing all that fake meat patties and those chemical concoction patties that we don't even know if are good or questionable for us. I'd like to see clinical evidence if they are. There is none, so I'm not, until there's clinical proof that they are, I'm not trying them. For fuck's sakes. there's clinical trials debunking a lot of the unsaturated fat replaces saturated fat. Let's see what this does. Oh, heart attacks chances got worse. Fuck that. Let's suppress that information for a few decades.
And J.C. Armitage says most of the food that does go to Africa gets taken by the governing warlords. That's one of the things he was pointing out. And what they're doing is they're basically getting this food for free because they're just taking it from all the other governments that are giving it as aid, and then they dump it in the markets at like these really cheap prices because it's 100% profit for them. But there's no way the local farmers can compete with that.
No. And the NCBA lobbied and bitched at government and companies for labeling where their origins of food were, and they won. So the subsidizing industry kills domestic farming because of the fact that it makes everything artificially cheap, and when they send their corn out for the corporate corn, subsidized corn, out to these other countries that feed them for the same ways, they can label that as product of the United States and lie and get away with it because this lobby group, the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, fucking did this with the government, and that is causing more domestic farming to fucking die out in the United States. And in other countries too, where they're trying to do domestic farming. But U.S. is getting the hardest. So when you buy supermarket beef, as nutritionally dense and decent as it is, you are subsidizing yourselves into oblivion, domestic farmers. May I warn you. So the real answer, try to make shit cheaper for yourself and make yourself compete wherever you can. And loophole, find a few tricks. So you're going to have to fight back.
So Clash Pride and CS both say that, that's on the capitalism death count video as well as the drug war. What does the drug war have to do with capitalism? How far gone in the head do you have to be to consider the war on drugs to be a part of capitalism? But that's what they have to do because, they've got a death count of over 200 million. They've got to try to, make it so that, capitalism has a death count. And so they're just grabbing random things, calling it capitalism, adding it into the death count.
It's kind of like the word racism. It pretty much just means something I don't like.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Or fascism. Yeah.
Or yeah. Let's see. What was it? Let me quote Bastiat.
I always love a good Bastiat quote.
Well, you're going to enjoy this one. Socialism, like the ancient ideas from which it springs, confuses distinction between government and society. As a result of this, every time we object to a thing being done by government, the socialists conclude that we object to its being done at all. Mm-hmm. We disapprove of state education. Then the socialists say we are opposed to any education. We object to state religion. Then the socialists say we all want no religion at all. Sorry, it was a mild paraphrase. We object to state-enforced equality. Then they say we are against equality, and so on and so on and so on. It's as if the socialists were to accuse us of not wanting persons to eat because we do not want the state to rise again. Frederick Bastiat.
Yeah, I love that quote. That is an awesome quote.
I do too. I keep that on me. Like if I was able to right now, I'd have it like in a frame and hanging on my wall.
Yep. There you go.
Say, if you're gonna bitch about being libtarded, read this quote and shove it. That's my room, my rules. If you come in here, read that quote.
That's capitalism for you.
That shit. You're gonna know where I stand, and you're gonna fucking I'm gonna Ben Shapiro you.
All right, anything else? Because that sounds like a pretty good thing to end on, unless someone has.
I just have one last question.
Okay.
I gotta get back to this Frederick Alzafon book on gravity controlled present tech. I just got to where he was trying to file a patent in 1980 to using this. Apparently, it's something to do with alarm frequency and an alloy using microwaves to lessen the effect of gravity on the material. It's weird. I want to read more into it.
That makes no sense, but whatever. What you got, Darth?
Oh, I was just curious what the Subscribe Star bot does.
Oh, that is what when you there's one for Patreon and there's one for Subscribe Star. When you sign on and become a supporter, it automatically puts you into the Discord roles for the benefits that you get, and that's the bot that does it.
Okay.
So, that's what it is. Clash Pride gives a happy belated birthday to Frederick Bastiat.
Just want to say, Shane, keep up the good work, and hope you enjoy your vacation. And
oh, thank you so much. We have definitely been needing this.
Yeah, have a good vacation. Go.
That should be a fallacy, JC, shouldn't it? Either the state does it or it never happens. It's an excluded middle, I guess, is what it would be. All right, well, I think we're going to leave it there. Thanks to Wes and Darth for participating in it. Thanks for everyone who did in the chat. Thanks for the super chats. I know Clash Pride was one. I don't remember. Was it Rainbow who did the other one? Rainbow Asteroids? No, I don't think that was it. I don't remember, and it's not on my screen anymore. But whoever it was, thank you so much. And thanks to everyone who asked questions. This was pretty good. It took, I think, a little over half an hour to answer the questions, and the rest is just us conversing. But yeah, we've got these questions answered. So if you'd like to ask a question for next month, just sign up for Patreon or Subscribe at the $3 level or higher. You'll see the post I put in there for the AMA, and you just ask your question in a comment, and I will get to it next month. When I get back from vacation, we will do the proper live stream benefit for all Patreon and Subscribe supporters. Until then, enjoy all the different videos I have queued up. Please let me know if you like that format, because I think I'm getting pretty good at it, and I might add it in along with the Lord Killian videos and everything else. I think the Lord Killian videos, they still get the most views of any of the other videos, but on the other hand, I can probably do, a couple of these a week, maybe 3. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But I will see y'all when I get back from vacation. Thank you so much for watching. Donate depictions.tv. Please go there and give any, even tiny amounts via cryptocurrency are most welcome, because that all adds up. And that's also where you get the links to join Patreon and Subscribe all at donate.depictions.tv. Thank you for watching, and until next month, stay strong and be free.
And this West Savage